Dr. Bindi is my professor. Scuriati. Scuriati. Allora, anyway, so first and foremost, thank you to our sponsors, IBS, Institute of Behavioral Science, for letting us use this space. For over 50 years, they've been advancing research and policy on some of society's most complex issues. And thank you to our second sponsor, the Conference on World Affairs, which, as Dr. Bindi said, I am the program co-chair, along with Xander Schulp over there, which for over 75 years has been leading diverse thought and discussion in Colorado. This year in April will be our 78th year. So if you like this panel, come check us out. We'll have 50 more. And now, Betty.
Just to briefly introduce us. We have people holding us from. Okay. So just to briefly introduce our speakers, we have Mrs. Jovita Neliupšienė, who is the EU ambassador for the US, and Mr. Jean-Marc Lieberherr, who is the president of the Jean Monnet Institute, as you know.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, probably. Yes, it's still morning. It's really a privilege to be here in Boulder, in the University of Colorado. And while working with Federica through your campus, I could not get rid of the feeling that I'm somewhere almost like in the middle of Europe. It's such a nice campus you have. So let me start from thanking students hosting us here, and Professor Federica Bindi for having and arranging me, and Jean-Marc, who is here with me today, and the chair of Jean Monnet Institute. And as we are here to speak about Europe in those quite challenging times, I thought that I will maybe speak about, let's say, three major stereotypes people usually have about the European Union, because this is the organization I represent. So I'm sure everybody in the room knows that EU is 27 member states, which are actually from small to medium countries in the European continent. So yet, let's see how the things develop. But sometimes people forget how actually EU got into existence. So with the name change of over the years, Europe have been, or European organization as a continental organization have been there for almost 80 years. After the Second World War, when the war was over and European continent was absolutely devastated, there were some brilliant ideas which actually were born. Some of them were born on European continent, that we have to work together. Another brilliant idea was born here in the United States by General Marshall, who actually come up with the idea that in order to make Europe more peaceful, more prosperous, to create a common aim for the future, you have to actually not ask countries to work together, but make them work together. So there was only one condition for the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan, actually, which was supposed to reconstruct Europe after the war, after the Second World War, actually made sure that everyone who participates with that within the plan has to cooperate. That actually brought Germany and France, first of all, but as well as several more countries to work together on a coal and steel community. And here it starts. So willingly or not, US is actually the architect of the European integration. And over the years, we changed. And it was not only that European integration was the principle of itself. The principle of itself, why the EU was created, it's not really what we usually read only in the media, and especially the headlines, not in their articles themselves. That it's for only the trade, only economy, and only for people spending time together. No, it's actually a peace project. It's the longest lasting peace project in global history. And those who are Americans in this room, actually you have to be proud of it, because this is your project, which you invested money and effort and people, of course, and while defending Europe and European right to live in democracy and freedom over the Second World War, actually, and then invested in the peace project. So this is your success, and you have to take credit for that. The second stereotype what people would hear about Europe, that European Union is kind of a bunch of some kind of the mysterious bureaucrats sitting in Brussels, every third week sitting in Strasbourg, or in some other obscure places in Europe. Well, they are not very obscure. They are very respected, like Frankfurt, or some other institutions are based in other nice cities. Honestly, yes, we have actually their European Commission officials. But if you think how many we have, and people say, oh, it's so bureaucratic. Does anyone knows how actually approximately how many European officials we have in Brussels? 30,000, which is less than you have actually in the State Department. This is for whole Europe. We have a bit more in the different institutions across Europe, but it's really not a significant number. So never believe that there is kind of some kind of. And then another element of this kind of that the bureaucrats are over there. Do you really think that those 30,000 people actually sit there in Brussels, which are not so nice as here? Usually it's a gray sky and it's a lot of rain over there. Like half of the days is, in the year it's raining. But they sit there and think it's like, oh my God, what could I regulate today? So we started from coal and steel community. Then we, of course, created single market. Then we created monetary union. We created euro. We created our foreign security community. We kind of grew over the time. But I can open the secret that actually it's not those bureaucrats who come up with the idea. Because EU was growing by numbers, like the member states were, like new countries were joining EU, and the challenges outside the world were growing as well, with their understanding that world is more globalized. So, countries like Luxembourg, even if they're extremely rich, they cannot actually deal with themselves alone if they don't have other partners. The countries like Germany, even if they are growing their automotive industry, they still need partners, they still need components, and some countries are actually just better in doing, for example, sensors than Germany, and so on and so forth. So the interest of integrating, not only kind of enlarging Europe, but integrating deeply, came from the member states, came from the leaders of the countries. So they would come together, be it at the council, where the ministers level come together, or be it after Lisbon Treaty, European Council, where the heads of state and government come together and make a political decision. This is the issue where to travel, where we want to go. And as the story goes, quite often, we make those decisions where to integrate more or how to integrate more deeply is actually comes when you have a crisis, When we had a financial crisis, sovereign debt crisis back in 2008, we integrated actually our financial and economic union. People still don't remember 2008, we have actually an energy crisis in Europe, where already at that time Russia tried to weaponize. They switched off the gas supply, for example, for Europe. So what happened there? Suddenly we realized that we don't have a connectivity among the European countries, and somehow the Baltic countries are not connected to Poland, and nowhere else in the north, and Spain is not connected to France. So it's not that new countries who came after 2004 are not connected energy-wise to the networks, but actually the countries who were there for a long time together in one boat actually are not connected. So the challenge actually brings this deeper integration into Europe. Sometimes, the question is how we actually go about it. We can probably go in the questions and answers, why sometimes we kind of regulate the way we do regulate, but you have to know that actually the interest to integrate and to regulate comes from constituency, which every country, 27 constituencies, sometimes we wish to have only one big 450 million of constituency, but it doesn't work, so we have to cooperate. Last but not least, so EU actually changed over the time. So from even those last 10 minutes I've been speaking, probably it's pretty clear that we actually are having in mind, it's not only economic community, energy community, and it's a political community as well. So we have our common interests, common aims, where we want to go. We have a rule of law, which is actually a guiding principle for all of us. We have ups and downs, we have crises, we had Brexit, we had migration, we have a huge financial and economic challenges over the years. But there is one thing which actually we never had before, which we have now. It's actually existential threat to their existence and in general, the idea of the European project. And this existential threat is actually Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Because this threatens the core why the EU was created as the peace project. Because we kind of believed that if we trade much more, not only within the single market, within the EU, but as well outside with the countries who are neighboring us, this will be the end of history, that everybody will wish to live in the freedom, in the democracy, to aspire for the liberal values. And actually we found out it's not really the case, even in our own continent, at our own borders. So the Russia's aggression actually threatened the principles of the sovereignty, of the border, of territorial integrity, in general, of the possibility to choose your way of life, which is where we want to be prominent, where we want to champion. That's why the huge, actually the leapfrog, what happened in the last, I would wish to say in the last 3 years, but actually it happened the last half a year only. So European Union, as of this moment, is the biggest spender on defense. Not the US, not the other countries, but the European Union. We are already spending 150 billion this year, which is we spending from the EU budget. So European Union never before was a defense industry organization. But here we are, and $910 billion will be spent in upcoming 3 years by all the member states taken together. The idea of all this defense spending is actually to make sure that we are starting bit by bit integrating our defense industry, because it's very dear to every country's heart, because it's a national security, and the word national actually tells you how fragmented the defense market is, and how we actually can, as the European Union, how we can help member states to incentivize joint procurement, joint work together, how we actually really not only talk about defense and security union, but actually create it. This would never happen if we would not feel this actually the threat at our border. So that's why for us, spending 185 billion for Ukrainian support, be it economic, financial, displaced people, and defense as well. This is where it comes to the core of ours. And let me end up by saying that it would be actually probably not true to say that, oh, everything is perfect in the EU. That not at all. We know our flaws. We try to overcome them, but EU is the only organization where we have actually a queue to be part of our community and to be part of the family. And I think that we should not shy away, and you should not shy away, because we are your project. Thank you very much.
Again. Oops. Sorry. Right. Well, thanks a lot, Ambassador. Thanks for having me, Federica, and thanks to all of you for coming here. Listen, I'll come back on a few things that Jovita said, and maybe go back a little bit more in time. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jean-Marc Lieberherr. I'm the founder and chair of the Jean Monnet Institute, named after Jean Monnet. Who's heard of Jean Monnet here? If you can raise your hand so I get a sense of, okay, it's actually not, is it? Do you hear me? Yes. So not many people. So I'll come back to it. It happens to be my grandfather, which is why I created the Institute. And he's widely known as the father of Europe, because he was the inspiration and the first leader of behind the first European community, which Ambassador Neliupšienė mentioned, which is the coal and steel community, which was really the start of our human and institutional adventure in Europe. And I'll try to go back a little bit to the spirit behind this coal and steel community, how it came about, and what was the deep vision behind it, because it does inform us about the true nature, the profound nature of our community, our union, as a peace project, but also as a project of unity and shared prosperity. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the role that the US played, because Monnet is someone who spent probably close to a third of his life in the US, including his most tender age, and it's not for nothing that the history of the US and that of Europe are so interlinked. It's also because of human adventures, human proximities, friendships, relationships, connections that have been built by people like Monnet in the US for many, many years. So Monnet had been involved in the organizing collective action of the Allies during the First and the Second World War, especially around military matters. And during the Second War, he developed that very strong conviction that if the European nations were going to rebuild after the war on the basis solely of national sovereignty, would have war again. And two, that they were too weakened coming out of the war to take care of, to meet the expectations of their populations without getting together and forming some kind of economic unit. So these were really, that's the beginning of the thinking. One, there is a risk of war again if these weak nations build solely on the principle of national sovereignty, which had been the principle on which international relations had been built for the previous 300 years with the results that we know. And two, they were too weak to be able to take care of their populations on their own without forming some kind of economic union. In 1950, the opportunity came to kind of translate that vision, that idea, into a reality. And the circumstances we know, Cold War, great tension between the West and the East. Everyone thought that the next war was imminent. And Monnet came with this idea of bringing France and Germany together by creating a de facto solidarity between them that would make it impossible for these two nations to ever go to war together again, both materially and psychologically. So hence the idea of coal and steel, which are the very ingredients that you need to dominate one another industrially or militarily. What if we're going to be pulling them together, put them under an independent authority that would manage these joint resources for the benefit of all, as opposed to let every nation access it and use it potentially for the sake of dominating the other. So that way the idea was, how do we take out any temptation and mean of domination of one European nation over another, starting with France and Germany. And of course, 4 other countries came back and came and joined us. Beyond that, there is really an interesting methodology behind all this, which is to take the very point of friction, the very object and tool of conflict, and turn it into a common good that's managed for the benefit of all. And that's really something that has contributed to creating this, a completely different psychological and material environment for European nations, starting to look at each other, not as potential enemies, but as allies whose destiny was intrinsically tied to their own. And that's really the big transformation of the coal and steel community that led to, the European Union as we know it today. The core principle behind all this was delegation of sovereignty. The idea that these nations that were otherwise totally sovereign would, on one specific point, share their sovereignty and exert it together over a critical resource. So we don't realize it today, but it's a huge paradigm shift. It's really the first time that nations voluntarily decided to share their sovereignty on a critical resource, and therefore relinquish the possibility of going after one another. So I think it's really important to understand that's the founding moment of our union, and really the spirit that still animates us. The ambassador has talked about the role of crisis. There was a crisis in 1950, that's how we moved. And Monnet almost theoreticized this principle by saying Europe will be built through crisis and will be the sum of the solutions that we find through this crisis. And that was really the idea, starting with coal and steel, is take advantage of that crisis in 1950 to move ahead. And then there'll be more crises that'll give us an opportunity to continue to integrate further and further and further, not because we want to, but because it is the necessity. It is the necessity that brings us together and pushes us, crisis after crisis, to integrate deeper as a European Union. So I'd just like to say a word about the US and how the US contributed to that, because we talked about the Marshall Aids. And yes, the US pretty much told us on many occasions, not just with the Marshall Aids, but before we'll help you if you're united. That happened as well during the Second World War, when my grandfather, Jean Monnet, went to Roosevelt in 1938 to buy planes. He came back with that message to the Brits. He said, they're okay to sell us planes, but they want joint procurement between the British and the French. They don't want to have to deal with the two separately. So that was really important. So the US really helped us do that. But I'd go a little bit further. My grandfather believed very strongly that the US and the EU were going to be, and Europe, United Europe, were going to be two pillars of a Western civilization built on the rule of law, because essentially they shared democratic values and they were leading their public life in similar ways. But there was one condition for it, which was that Europe had to be built to a position of power where it could speak on an equal basis with the Americans, because it did believe that partnership was, had to be built on equality, and that as soon as one would have again the means of domination of the other, because of an imbalance in power, would create the conditions for this partnership to fall apart. I think we're seeing that to some extent today. But how did Monnet build this vision of, the importance of the US and Europe working together, and the importance of the US in building a united Europe? Well, first he spent most of his time from the age of 18 years old to the age of 26 traveling in North America, in the US, selling his cognac, his family cognac. He never went to school, or he did go to school. He didn't graduate from high school. At age 16, he started. You've gone much further than he ever went from a studies point of view. But he was a very pragmatic man. He was a businessman. He came to the US. He sold his cognac in the US. He built very strong connections with US business circles, and he kept that sense of the power of a big market, the power of big space, the pioneering spirit. Everything is possible. When there is no frontier, when you can't see the horizon, your mind is limitless. The possibilities are limitless. So he got his ambition, and he got his idea of creating a big space for European nations directly from his formative years in the US, selling his cognac and traveling on horseback across the country. So there is really a heritage, almost a philosophical heritage that is transmitted through this personal experience of that young man from the US into the EU. Then obviously the US played a key role in supporting the Allies during the Second World War and making peaceful European unification possible. And my grandfather was here in the US at the time, working very closely with the Roosevelt administration and playing a key role in structuring the Victory program. He then played a key role again in organizing the Marshall Aid into Europe, which was really a key enabler, not only from a material point of view, to give us the means to build as a community, but also the pressure that came with it, that we had to be united to be able to receive that support. But what is less known is the role that the US played in precisely this European coal and steel community. The US administration at the time in 1950, when Monnet came up with this idea, played a very important role in convincing the Germans to join. And they were the ones who came in the first place with the pressure on the French and the British to say, find a solution to the German problem, find a way to anchor Germany into Western Europe. And that's as a result of that pressure that Monnet came up with this idea. This is the way we're going to be doing it. And then they put pressure on Konrad Adenauer to say, okay, I'm sure this is a great idea. You guys got to play ball and you got to do it. So when people say that the European project is a project that was made against America, is completely wrong. Actually, America played a key role in putting pressure on Europeans to do it. A few years later, we had this idea that came from Monnet as well of creating a European army, European defense community. Again here, Eisenhower put his weight behind it and supported the project, again, supporting a European project. It never happened, but that was, the Americans were behind it. And finally, the last thing, in the last 20 years of his life, Monnet created an action committee for the United States of Europe, and that action committee was largely supported by the Ford Foundation, which is obviously an important American foundation. And so they did support, again, the work that Monnet did for a united Europe. So I'll stop here. I think it's really important to remember that at every important step of European integration adventure, the US were there from the inspiration all the way to supporting its implementation. So thanks for that. And let's open to Q&A.
So thank you so much. Now we're gonna open to Q&A. We're gonna switch to a mic that hears you. For those that are following us from class or house or home, you can write your questions here. For the sake of having as many questions as possible, keep it short and with a question mark, and introduce yourself. Say who you are when you have a question. Okay, I wanna see hands up. Who wanna start? Okay, 1 and 2, go.
When you were going and talking about Russia and sort of how Russia is really this first security threat to the EU, what policies is the EU engaging in to ensure that Russia isn't going to go, if in the inevitable that they possibly go and annex Ukraine, that they don't go and invade Poland or the Baltic states, which I know you're from? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think that as I mentioned, in general, reviewing our security and defense policy and union is the key element. So the EU is the only in the world international organization who actually purchases lethal weapons for the third country. So Ukraine, because it's not a member, it's a third country for us. So we do believe that Ukrainian fight or Ukrainian defense is actually defense of European continent freedom and sovereignty. So this is one element. It was hard because in order to spend money, you have to get unanimity. So you have 27 member states and they have to vote together on that. So I can assure you, we spent many hours negotiating that. The other element is, as I mentioned, we call it. There are two probably the major elements which we are building. The project which we called Resilience 2030. It sounds a bit of further down the road, but this is the investment in defense industry. Because when you think what kind of the warfare is right now happening at our borders in Ukraine by Russia, is actually not only the war with tanks and missiles and trenches, it's all drones. There are cyber attacks, there are information warfare, there are other kind of the hybrid attacks they experience in Ukraine, and sometimes it actually goes over the border to the EU/NATO. We have to say. So there is a lot of things which European Union as an organization actually can contribute, because it doesn't. Some of the things does not fall under like hardcore defense stuff, which NATO is responsible about, like kind of pulling the capabilities, checking the capabilities, and making sure we can use the capabilities NATO countries and NATO allies have. But how you actually build, for example, rapid reaction forces to cyber attack. How you actually refill, because a lot of things right now depends in warfare if you have enough energy to sustain. How you actually refill each other, so we have the Repower EU element in that. So how you actually have possibility to supply. We do that in hubs because Europe is quite big. So how you, like if, for example, the famous Druzhba oil pipeline is actually cut, how you supply, for example, Slovakia through the other means, and this is just an example. The most important part, actually, from whatever you can have, like we will have almost $1 trillion to spend in the upcoming 3 to 5 years. So nice, good money is good. The question is, how you spend. We spent last evening actually discussing what is the best way to spend the money. But where European Union can actually contribute is to rebuild our defense industry, defense industrial base, because we were privileged under the NATO umbrella mostly, actually, under the US involvement in European continent, kind of not to pay too much attention on our defense spending and our defense capabilities. So now time has come actually to share the burden, if you wish, or to share the responsibility, to put it more diplomatically. So this is where, again, because EU is famous for building up the industrial policy, economic resilience, economic security terms. This is what we do actually over the last 8 years. So take it in and do that in the defense industry area is the way actually to approach. And to, if we actually manage to build up defense industry, and via that, of course, to build up our own capabilities, this is the best answer, because deterrence, as you know, is actually the best answer to any enemies or threats which are challenging you.
Yes, I'm looking at the title. I wanted to make sure that my question was going to fit with what the title was, which is about Trump's world. I wanted to hear your thoughts about who we are or what's going on with the EU now that there is a thing called Trump's world.
Well, you know, the American people has spoken. They elected the president, and we actually, as a diplomats, we have to work with any administration which is elected here in the United States. There are policies which we disagree, and I have to admit that over the course of the 80 years, there were ups and downs, and you know, the differences and the disagreements, and quite grave situations before. And well, one of those is actually the trade policy, because the EU, as I mentioned, is a bunch of small, medium countries. We actually, our economy is built on open market economy rules. That means that we trade a lot. We, in general, are trading bloc in our DNA. So for us to think and to use the tariffs as the primary trade policy actually goes against our idea about the economic policies in general. Yes, tariffs can be used as the last resort to defend your your most vulnerable industries, but that's it. So we are trying actually to position ourselves. Yes, we negotiated the trade deal with the President Trump. Because we do believe that we need stability for our own business, but we still believe that there are other options how to conduct things. We do share President Trump's interest in the peace deals as well, especially, of course, as I spoke in Ukraine, but not only. If you look at the map, so you would see that on the eastern border we have Ukraine, on the southern border we have Middle East. You know, there some countries are actually closer to Israel, Palestine, than they're closer to Ukraine. So for us, it's we really want to be part of the solution, how to make it work. But there is one really principle which I think that all European leaders who were in DC a couple of months ago, and who just made a statement today in the morning, actually is that any peace deal, any ceasefire which is made, it should be fair, should be long-lasting and should actually prevent from the situation reoccurring again. So, so for us, for example, we can I can stick with Ukraine because we don't see the change of Russia's behavior so far. Just saw the comments of Foreign Minister of Russia, Lavrov, saying that ceasefire will be kind of against Russia's interests. That actually you don't really need to comment. It goes. Says quite a lot. So we would really continue encouraging and working together with this administration. We have to put pressure on Russia. We have to put sanctions. We are ready to consider different other measures, even even in certain areas, maybe tariffs. We can, but we will use Russian frozen assets. There is actually, what is today, Wednesday? No, Tuesday, sorry. So on Thursday, we have leaders of European Union, like heads of state and government coming together to make a political decision, really to not to use only the interest rates of the frozen assets, but really to use the whole frozen assets, 180 billion, which is a huge amount actually overall. So I think that there are other areas where we can work with the President Trump and his administration, and it's difficult to, for example, to contradict that we have to fight organized crime. And honestly, if you think about it, we already know by example that you cannot do that alone. However strong you are, it's not possible. We want to work together on non-market economies. You call non-market, no, we call non-market economies. You call them China. But I think that economic coercion, especially misusing critical minerals. This is another area where you can work. And again, from the lessons we learned over the last three years, I think that there is pretty clear understanding that you cannot handle it alone. You just signed a deal with Australia. Why? Because you need partners, and we need partners definitely in the area. So, little by little.
Sorry, just can I add just on this question, because I think it's really important. I would just add to what the ambassador just said, that it's a waking call for Europe. We've built ourselves as a community of peaceful, collaborative nations, and it's in our DNA. We're nice to each other. We try not to dominate each other, and in many ways, it's the success of our extraordinary adventure. But somehow our teeth are maybe not as sharp as they would have been if we'd built our project on another basis. Now we're in a world, coming out of the post-Second World War world where, the US was clearly seen as an ally, would have our back, where international institutions were governing relations between nations, where we see the weakening of institutions, and we see that the allies, might not be exactly as supportive as they were, and we've got to reinvent ourselves as a power. Now we've got to build the attributes of power and reinvent ourselves as a power. That's one thing. I think that's one. And we talked about defense. It's one element, but there are other elements, and for that we've got to be able to express it and speak with one voice, like powers do, and because that's how they're being listened to. And the second role I think that we can play is role model a certain way to live together. And that's something I really believe in, that we are a community of value in Europe. We share some profound beliefs about the rule of law, about equality, about respect, decency, and the way to solve our conflicts in a responsible manner, not through the rule of the strongest, but the rule of law. And I think Europe has to rediscover the power of being an example for others who are tempted to resolve their conflict through violence, that actually there are other ways to live together. So I do believe that in that context, there is really strong role to play for Europe.
We have four questions. Okay, 5. Let's ask the various questions as well. Okay, 1.
I noticed your comment on the American people have spoken. Does the EU have any plans in terms of the racial profiling that's been legalized in the US? A lot of people are in danger in my hometown city, sorry, I can't see you, of Chicago after the National Guard, Texas Guard has been deployed. At what point in this violence against those who dissent with what the American people have said or elected Trump, would the EU consider offering asylum to those who are in danger from Trump's policies?
Okay, that's a good question. 1. Yep. Okay. Let's go in. Let's go row by row. Okay. My colleague there. Yes, go.
Okay, I'm over 80 years old. I have some Lithuanian heritage. But everything I'm hearing is from one side of the street. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis as a young kid. Now I'm saying, look, tell us the story from the Russian side. You know, I mean, if you were Russia and NATO kept moving closer to you, Cuban Missile Crisis was a story similar to that. You know, then you saw Belarus. That must have been something that really made Russians worry, because it looked like liberalization was going to be right there at their fence. So can you tell me why the Russians, sort of what's their argument? I mean, you know, do they have a reason to be concerned? Is it purely their aggression? What does the other side look like? What do you feel that they're responding to, other than just aggression?
Okay, there was 1 here, 1 there. Okay.
2 points of historic collaboration between the United States and Europe have been advancing human rights and advancing democracy globally. How have you navigated the shift from this administration that has rolled back those policies?
Freeze enough? Okay, let's start then with the next. Go, remember.
To remember. Well, I think that the first and the last question kind of correspond. Honestly, look, well, European Union will stick to the principles, and Jean-Marc mentioned, you know, rule of law, human rights, the democracy. These are our principles, which the countries will continue to promote. We are the second largest donor, development cooperation donor. Part of our money actually right now goes further trying to incentivize business to join us, which we never did before. So we are learning on the go. Another part actually goes for the projects like, you know, promoting human rights, civic education, and protecting people actually in some of the most severe situation. I would not lie, actually it puts quite a lot of pressure on us. Because of course the decision of, for example, to close down USAID, who was a long-standing partner for the European institutions, but not only institutions, organizations globally around the world. It's I was really lucky to hear that there are a lot of private organizations, private foundations in the US who are very active, because you have a long-standing tradition. They're kind of stepping up. We are in a process where we do really see that it's a life-threatening backdrop. So then we definitely are stepping up. If it's a possibility kind of to find and navigate, we are looking where we can actually, you know, where we can contribute. So this is a kind of the answer, you know, could be like case by case, but overall, it's actually, I think that helps for the other countries to mobilize and to see that there is a need in the field, and hopefully there will be kind of a comeback, and then the development bank, which is here in the US, kind of about to be built, maybe. So maybe that could be an answer and the story, because this is a huge soft power we share. I think that's, we have to admit. And I've been brought in Lithuania, and I've been either working with Russia or Belarus. I was posted in Belarus, or I was working with the issues. I'm on the Russian sanction list. Maybe I'm not anymore. I don't know. I never tried again to go there. It's not really the favorite place at the moment. I would wish to have any other explanation than the imperial ambitions. I'm the former political scientist. I have PhD in political science, which is actually, by the way, related to studying the region. I would wish I have any other answer to your question, that there is some kind of their threat. NATO is defense alliance. NATO never, ever worked into the conflict on its own because of, I don't know, someone come up with the idea of that. After Soviet Union collapsed, the member country, the countries who were freed finally after 50 years of occupation, like mine, the only way forward for them was really transatlantic integration, European transatlantic integration, because over the 600 years of the history, we knew who are our neighbors, and if I am a sovereign country and I'm representing sovereign country, probably it's my right to decide which kind of the political, military, or any kind of blocs I want to join. And there was a choice. And well, sorry to say, there was a choice where some countries, like Ukraine, Moldova, and some others decided, or Belarus, they decided that they will be neutral. And it was their leadership and their people's choice. I wouldn't wish to be in their place, because our choice was to be part of NATO and the European Union. And I think that we actually gained from our political choice in there. And I just quoted the Foreign Minister Lavrov today saying that any ceasefire goes against Russian interests. So what exactly Russian interest is in there? Really, do we believe that they are protecting Russian-speaking population in Ukraine? Do they have a right to protect Russian-speaking population in any other countries? Well, so why actually, I'm trying to think, a good example which would not be politically incorrect as for the diplomat, was like, so Romania actually could have a right to protect Romanian-speaking population in Moldova or in Ukraine, and they can just march with the army. Well, there would be people and scientists who would say that actually all Moldovians speak Romanian, but well, I will leave that question. I would not comment on that. But so there are certain principles which after the Second World War we agreed, which was territorial integrity, borders, and sovereign choice of life. I think that's more than enough to have it.
Okay, we have questions. Okay, let's start here and then go backwards.
Both of you mentioned that European Union is a peaceful project designed by US, and you say US should be proud of this project. And my question is, do you think US still proud of this project now? And do they are the US satisfied with this project? And what do you think the relationship between US and EU at this point? Are they equal friends, or
Good question.
it's a friend that is privileged that I designed this project, I made you a better place? So what's your idea?
Let's get a few questions back there. Okay. We're walking toward.
My name is Andres Almonte.
Higher your voice. We can't see you. Up.
Sorry.
Up. Stand up.
Yeah, I'm Andres Almonte. I'm an international affairs student here. This kind of goes in line with the questions regarding human rights, but also regarding what you just said about territorial integrity, sovereignty, and how Russia's attacking of Ukraine really goes at the core ideology of the European Union. I think in the United States, we've seen multiple human rights violations. Recent reports say that over 170 Americans have been detained without warrant. Aside from that, we're also seeing territorial aggression outside of the US with President Trump's strikes in the Caribbean. He's been claiming to attack Venezuelan drug dealers, essentially. Multiple reports have contradicted that. We've actually repatriated the survivors, which contradicts that. The Colombian president recently came out and said that one of the strikes was in Colombian waters and it killed a man who was confirmed to be a lifelong fisherman. Does the European Union have any plans to respond to that? Or, really, I feel like exert responsibility to protect human rights and territorial sovereignty around the world.
And then last question.
Thank you. Europe has been reliant on Russian energy supply. Given the circumstances, how is Europe trying to respond to that? And more specifically, to what extent is Europe looking across the pond to the United States to satisfy European demand for energy? Thank you.
So everything that's related to how Europe intends to respond is going to go to the ambassador. There was one question about perception. I can talk about perception, being living in France, about whether there is a perception that the US is still an ally and a supporter of European integration. Well, first I had to say the US because you're all Americans, and you're all here because you're interested in the European Union, and so the US is the Trump administration is not the US. So here again, I talk as a European citizen. There is certainly a perception in the US, in the European Union, that the Trump administration, and you wouldn't say that, the Trump administration and its circle of supporters are seeing the European Union as a bad example, let's say, and are intentionally attempting to undermine the values of the European Union, because precisely all the values and all the principles on which the European Union were built were the ones that are being undermined by this administration. I'm speaking as an individual here. The rule of law as opposed to the rule of the strongest, the idea of win-win partnerships as opposed to zero-sum gain transactions. Every single principle that the European Union community was built on are the principles that are being undermined by the US administration. So we do feel very much embattled at the moment, but not about the US, but certain individuals or certain circles in the US.
Well, maybe to continue on the perception question, I would say that a lot of things actually is related to the approach, how the international relations or foreign policy is dealt, and this approach is what President himself actually calls deal making. So on one hand, it's very complicated within the EU because we are 27 to make decisions. So it takes a bit of the time. But when we make a decision, actually, we can kind of hold. So we are a big partner. We are the largest trading partner for the US. And what people don't usually know, we are the biggest foreign direct investor here. We actually invested in the US 5.4 trillion. So this is the amount. In a day with US, we trade 4.5 billion. So across the Atlantic, it goes, back and forth. So we are the major trading partner. So even if someone is dismissive about us, maybe someone is unhappy about us, maybe is, have a different perception of about us, actually is still has to deal with us. And I think that's where sometimes we as Europeans, sometimes we shy away of what we have and how much of we can achieve, not only vis-a-vis US. It's it's globally. So my favorite question is on energy, so I will leave that for the more positive note. Look, as the ambassador, any ambassador, be it I am ambassador of the EU or be it ambassador of the member state or like bilateral ambassador, there is a golden rule: we don't comment domestic politics. I can, what I do is actually we observe, we report, and we'll reserve this right for our leaders to do that. I can tell only one thing, that, for example, migration issue, it is a huge issue back at home. It took us 10 years to negotiate migration package. Is it a remedy actually? Those who are actually following that, I'm not so sure that we already know this, which is the silver bullet, and we can share with global and say like, look, you do like us, and then you will solve the problem, and you will not need any other measures you are using. So I think that we have to really, use this time and leave for our leaders and for American citizens to speak and to express themselves on energy. So for me, like this is kind of this double-hatted thing. So for my entire professional career, I was a Lithuanian diplomat, or not, worked in the government for the whole more than 20 years. And one of the first decisions when we got independence in 1992, which was extremely expensive, we actually built refinery at the Baltic coast. So in 1992, we actually switched off from the Russian oil as Lithuania. Because from the period of our declaration of independence in 1990 till then 1992, it was 68 incidents when Russia switched on, switched off gas and oil for us. They threatened at that moment, we still had a nuclear power plant based on Chernobyl type reactor. They would actually threaten from time to time what they would do and what would not do with that as well. So we learned a very hard lesson over this very short period of time. Lithuania is actually maybe not so high in the attitude as here, but it's in the very north. So when you don't have gas and oil in wintertime, it's actually freaking cold. I remember sitting in my classroom with my mittens. And I was just in the primary at that moment. I learned the lesson, and the only thing I know that once Russian went to Crimea in 2014, early 2014, I was working for the president at that moment. The decision which we made, we were asking around European to help them for the money. There was another expensive decision which we made in 2014, once the little green man came to Crimea. We actually leased the offshore LNG facility from South Korea, because there was no one to find in Europe, because people in Europe were still thinking that, oh, will go away, and maybe we can talk them through, and everything will be resolved. I can tell you it was really expensive at that time, and was expensive for the country like Lithuania to do that. But that was the moment when we actually started, as being small country of 3 million, to push the whole European Union that we need energy union, energy union, energy union. People thought that we are actually absolutely obsessed with this thing because this was the only topic we would speak. I said, like, do you have any other topic? Do you want to talk anything? Like, talk about Russia. But energy union is about Russia for us. But anyway, so that's, so since 2014, the first company to supply LNG to this offshore facility in Lithuania, Lithuanian coast, which actually was supposed to serve and still serves all 3 Baltic states from plus part of the Finland's need, was actually Shineri, which is American company. It was extremely expensive. It was more expensive than to buy from Norway, but the Norway had all the capacities at that time booked and blah, blah, blah. It's a, you know, it's an energy market is another miracle which you have to live in order to understand how it works, which I don't. So we bought from Americans because we thought that was the strategic decision from the country to do. And from now, and from that moment, and with the lessons in 2008 when Russia switched on and switched off the gas supply for some other European countries, there was a decision actually to make an energy union. The only thing we did till the war in Ukraine started in 2022 was actually we, as I told in the beginning, like we made those hubs kind of to make sure that we can resupply if something happens kind of in the crisis mode. But in 2022, we, like in the first months of the war, we actually find that, well, sorry guys, it's not enough. Because on one hand, it was not first the decision to switch off or to decouple from Russian fossil fuels was not coming from Europe. Because Russians actually switched off gas and oil for Europe because Europeans supported Ukraine. So then there was a huge actually mindset or mind-blowing decision in the biggest European countries. Actually, well, this is actually a huge vulnerability for us. And we had to really to come up with the idea. So right now, so we have been buying from Russia all the fossil fuels, which were worth annually 144 billion. Within the 3 years, we managed to go to 21 billion. Yesterday was the day when the council, so the ministers' level decision was taken actually, that here it is, within the upcoming 2 years, we are actually stopping buying any Russian gas, oil, nuclear, enriched uranium, and nuclear technology. Well, for those who deals with nuclear, you know that we need at least 2 years. It's a technological process. Within the sanction package, we have even advanced that we will not buy any gas from Russia as of the end of this year. So, and there are actually handful only member states who are still buying. This 20 billion is still in the, let's say, 5 member states. There were the decisions due to the different circumstances, which I would not go. But as of now, when the European Parliament will finally kind of make a decision of that, it will be illegal by law to buy Russian fossil fuels. So now the supply side, where it comes from, by the way, I pay at least 30% more for my gas fuel to fuel than my car than you guys here. That's at least. In some places you pay almost double. But, and you know, people are concerned about that, but they do understand what is happening. European Union is the biggest importer of American LNG at the moment. You don't have any other client which buy more of your LNG in the world. It's us. And whenever and whatever your new capabilities of export will come online, I can tell you we probably will be in the need, because it's not only you who are building data centers and AI. We still have some of that, and we need, you know, energy and all the above of that. So we are getting there, not in the pace I would wish personally, but I'm glad that we actually finally kind of did that.
Not completely convinced that buying from LG from the US is a wise decision from many points of view, but
well, it's still actually only 30% of our inputs. So we buy most of their LNG, but in our energy mix, the largest supplier is not US, it's Norway. So it's a diversified, to answer your questions. And
we're actually running out of time at this point. Just 2 words, each of you, to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to leave you with the sense that there is some inherent animosity that's building between the US and the EU. I think we're stronger than, you know, a government pass and powers shift. And what we've got that brings us together, whether it's our families or whether it's our shared history, or there's the fundamental values that we've got all, I think that we probably share all in this room here. It's a lot stronger than anything that can happen between powers, between governments, and so on. And I think it's up to us to keep that alive and to cherish it and to promote it. So I think that's why first time I came to the US, I spent 3 months on a ranch in Wyoming. And that was my contact with the US. And that's the US I love. And no one is going to take that away from me, the relationships I've built there and so on. And I think it's just stronger than anything. We just got to cultivate it regardless what happens out there.
that gives me an idea. The first time I came to US, I spent 8 months in Omaha, Nebraska. And I still have friends in there, and I think that's. I agree with Jean-Marc. This is what matter. But honestly, like, let's think, if we, like US, EU, Japan, Korea, the European countries in general, and like if we would not set the rules, who would set the rules? So I would really as well kind of encourage us to think that well, there are lots of pathways to go forward, and we definitely will take those, not the opposite. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are any cookies or coffee left on the way out, please take it. Thank you so much for coming and attending. Hope to see you.
Thank you.
Coffee. I actually wrote to
Help. Help.
You know that he's
Yeah, so I wrote him this. Monnet's,
now we're on to the new unit.
Oh, you can okay.
That he talked about it. I don't know if you've read it.
I forgot, it was a lot fun to meet you both.
Yeah.
Let's try to look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that's why I said up front that, you know, I would wish I have an answer.
I know. Still, you could just repeat the question. I don't know if you know that Joseph Lincoln, maybe the first Minister of Defense, he's my cousin.
Hi, Olekas. Yes, Joseph Olekas. Yes, he's alive.
But in my 70s house, I was President's office.
She was the one.
He's very much alive, still active in the politics.
regulation.
Cousin runs the room and says hello.
Okay, great.
Of course. Having a
So
weird
maybe we
position
could
of
invite Espen.
like when your relatives looking backwards. Taiwanese
Let's have a, okay, I think we should do.
Across areas of two major powers that the US is not aligned with.
Oh, be alive. I'm well, in real life.
I know you sent some
We have a lot of
emails.
favorites. Just like.
Well, I think there is. When you're seeing the level of polarization in the United States today, and between racial groups that are kind of still pregnant. So in Europe, awareness of things and alertness to risks associated with polarization. Much higher in countries in the US. We're seeing nationalists and populist parties starting to emerge in Europe. That really worries us. Support business community that way. I think there is.